Right now, it is time to not head to the polls, but head to sunny Florida and speak to Tim, Luke, and Greg Strom, the appraisal guys, the frickin' frack of Nick and Knack. Appraise this. You can find them on the web, tqag.com. Good morning, Tim. Good morning, Greg.
Good
Good
morning.
morning.
So, did you guys vote early?
Oh, yes.
We did by mail. So we did it back in September, and we double checked to make sure it was that it got there safely, and it arrived.
All right. Well, I've got to start off today because if I don't do this, I'm going to be in big trouble. The boss gave me an article to talk to you guys about. Are you ready?
Oh, we're always ready.
Okay. I hope I'm pronouncing the name right. The Sassoon family collection of Jewish artifacts are being sold at auction from one of the greatest Jewish dynasties in the world in New York.
Oh, you know what? I did see there's the Judaica. There's a big Judaica sale.
Yeah.
So that was the article. Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough one.
68 items, Hebrew manuscripts, family artifacts collected by the family dating back to the 11th century.
Yeah, that's.
This is what you call a specialized auction.
It's extremely specialized.
I've always kind of had a thing about selling the Judaica, only because it's the same thing like in any religion. For some reason, there's a lot of people who believe that these things are sacred and that they should not be passed around. They should not be sold to the highest bidder. So I mean, they usually bring quite a bit of money, but there's a school of thought, I think, out there, and I'm part of that school. I must admit that I just kind of find it's kind of wrong to sell religious items like that. But that's my opinion.
Well, now this is going to sound rather crass, but then again, coming from me, we didn't expect any less. It's no different than selling, to me, a trophy like that you might have won from the Academy Awards.
Well, I guess, but I think part of it is that we, as a Christian and Jewish society, have been raised as kids, most of us, to revere anything religious, and so we were always taught that this sort of practice was sacrilegious and blasphemous. So, I mean, there's a lot of that goes into it, I think, just from your upbringing. But I totally understand your point, and it makes perfect sense to me because of, we're in the industry, so I have to think on both sides. But it's something that's always been just kind of my thing. It's been an issue for me.
Well, yeah, I love the word you use, blasphemy. It's one of my favorite words ever since Monty Python did the movie. And I don't know if you remember, there was the scene where the person who said Jehovah was being stoned for saying Jehovah. So if you guys haven't seen it, Google that clip, and that word blasphemy will stay in your life forever.
Yeah, I've seen the movie several times. Given a few minutes, I could probably start quoting.
I know, it's terrible, isn't it? I'm the same way. So what's new on your end, guys, that we would talk about from the auction?
So I wanted to talk about something that just sold just 2 or 3 days ago, and this illustrates that sometimes when you have something that is in not so good condition, but it is in rarity, there's a high rarity factor and a high desirability factor that will outweigh the condition. Just a couple days ago, we've talked about Honus Wagner baseball cards in the past. Well, this one was a Honus Wagner, but it was probably the one of the worst condition cards that has ever been up for auction, and it's still sold for $1.4 million, a record for a card in that condition. So it really goes to show is that as these rare pieces end up in other collections or don't come up to the market very often, these will sell for over $1 million. It's amazing to see a collectible, especially a collectible that sells over $1 million, which is fascinating.
Well, I think part of the allure of this card in particular is the fact of the story behind it and how there were so few of them. They had to stop production. It never really made it out there. And there are only 57 known to have survived. And it's been about 110 years since it came out. And I guess just because of the rarity of it, doesn't really matter, I think, the condition. But I remember when you sold the original, or when you sold the T20 at Christie's, and it was a record then, and I think it was like $500 and some $1,000.
Well, no, it was more than that. It was like 650 something, and it was a T206. Yeah, it's the Honus Wagner T206, and that's the one that had the whole background that Wayne Gretzky and another hockey player, I think, owned and then sold at Sotheby's in the 80s. And then Walmart purchased that, and then they sold it. Or actually, Walmart did a promotion, because what they did is they moved close to $20 million of dead merchandise by repackaging it, and it put a chance to win. And you had to fill out the card, and then they did a drawing, and whoever the winner was won the Honus Wagner baseball cards. So it was a real big motivator for people to buy that dead merchandise.
Now, to show you how things have changed, I'm sitting here listening to you guys talk and talking about $1 million. $1 million used to sound like a lot of money, but now when you look at some of the auction results from individual items, I know for me $1 million is a lot of money. But you really see that over the past 10 years, $1 million in auctions like this is basically like an entry bid nowadays.
Yeah, and to contrast that, I was just looking through some of the auctions that have just recently closed, and some of the big auctions. For example, Sotheby's closed a car auction, $44 million. They sold $44 million worth of. So $1 million doesn't seem. It seems like chunk change, considering when you think about some of the other art things, $120 million for a piece of art at auction. So these art auctions that get close to $400 and $500 million at an auction, it just the amount of money, we just somehow take it for granted now, and it's
right.
Sick.
I understand, but also for a collectible, because you don't see a number of collectibles that sell in that range. That's what is interesting. More and more collectibles are getting up in that range, and that's what's interesting to me, because my gosh, when we started in this 30 years ago, you'd be lucky if you hit 10,000, or maybe there were some that went to 100,000. That was rare. Now we're talking about $1 million for a piece of cardboard. I mean, this is a piece of cardboard that had printing on it.
In bad taste, no less.
Well, the interesting thing about looking at auction prices, and I'm not just talking about art, I'm talking about auction prices at all, is that if someone's smart enough to hold on to something and do something, there's always got to be somebody who makes something collectible. I don't know if you know what I mean. I mean, it just doesn't happen. It takes someone and then a group of people. And now with social media, I think that because social media is worldwide, all of a sudden the doors got blown off.
Well, we saw that in the 90s and early 2000s. You have influencers, somebody like Martha Stewart, when she would be doing her cooking shows and doing all kinds of things and featuring Fiesta ware or depression glass or a certain pattern of whatever the glassware was. And then they started recreating it and selling it and making it really hot again. But then it faded. So there's that side of it, but then there's also the diehard collectors who are always looking at these types of collectibles. And we always go back to the basic definition of collecting is that it's either something that is nostalgic or something that reminds you of your youth, and you also have the means to buy them. So it's interesting to see how the changes in society and where things are going. But I agree with you, Marshall. There's also influencers out there that when you see these things selling at auction, then people say, well, I should probably invest in this, or maybe I should start collecting this or start looking at this. And they start defining what makes things cool or what things are stylish or what things should be collectible by what things sell for.
Well, it's interesting when you say Martha Stewart. Some people just have the celebrity that they become influencers, and all of a sudden they are. But there's other people. There's got to be unscrupulous people out there that try to be influencers, that try to do something that really end up having people fall for it's almost like a gambling game.
Yeah, well, not to call them out, but maybe QVC and HSN or Hallmark with all of the decorations, the Christmas things, saying, "Oh, these are collectible," So it's. And I think we talked about this last week or the week before, is that there's a big distinction between merchandise and what's collectible. And I think the more people educate themselves to understand that, we always say buy what you like and always collect what you like. But if you are going into it, you should know, wait, this might be more merchandisey. I do love it, but I don't have high expectations for it. As opposed to something like this Honus Wagner baseball card, when you do a little bit of research, you see, well, there's not that many out there. There's a lot of sports fans. Baseball is the American pastime. There will be collectors of baseball and vintage baseball memorabilia. So that's a good investment.
Well, it's like we said, it's just to sit back and look at this all develop. All I can think of, and to what I'm talking about are Cabbage Patch Dolls and Beanie Babies.
Well, that's merchandising.
Yeah, that's merchandising to the nth degree, and all those people that sat there 10 years later with 5,000 Beanie Babies that were worthless.
Yeah, I think it goes back to Tim has a saying about what is collectible, and I think if we leave today and everybody just remembers this, is that a true collectible is something that was never meant to be collected, but when found in excellent condition can be valuable
several generations later.
Exactly. Now, unlike Cabbage Patch Dolls and Beanie Babies, which they were manufactured solely for the premise of making money as a collectible, which kind of
the Beanie Babies jumped in there right there and said, "Oh, these are going to be worth so much and so long." As soon as somebody says these are going to be worth something in many years.
Well, it's funny. Before we wrap up, years and years and years ago, I used to attend the Hall of Fame ceremonies because I was in sports when I worked in Kingston, New York. And every year, you would go and you would get from the Sports Writers Association, if you covered it as media, there was this little pin for that year's ceremony. Okay, and I got them and I came home and would throw it. Well, after doing this for 15 years, someone who knew I went every year called up and they wanted to go with me. And so I said, "Well, why would you want to go with me?" "Well, those pins are valuable." So I said, "What pins? Don't you get a pin in a year?" So I said, "Yeah, it's a little lapel pin." He said, "Look at them." And on the back of them, there was little inscribed numbers, which number pin it was. They would make like 200 pins a year.
Yeah.
Well, I ended up many, many years ago selling 18 pins. And now, listen, you're going to laugh at this. This is a long time ago, for almost $15,000.
Yeah.
No, I would believe that because those that's a
Like
true
the Olympic pins. Yeah.
exactly.
Well,
Exactly.
well, finally, baseball found out what people were doing, and they just started making a lot of them and not numbering them.
Well, they are still selling. Just by the way, they are still selling. People, baseball is still a big thing. So, I mean, people they don't sell for as much, but they still are desirable, and desirability is probably next to condition and provenance is the most important factor for collecting. So, they still are available, and it's ones that are the vintage ones that are commanding the most money.
Well, I used to go up there to see my baseball famous people when I wouldn't cover anything news-wise. I just walk down the streets. You'd run into Vicky Mantle, Whitey Ford, Joe Pep, all these people, and I'd be beside myself. And I wasn't an autograph just to sit and talk with them and stuff like that. It was great. Well, that's it for my collecting ability, though. Guys, I want you to have a good election day. Have some wine, plenty of wine tonight as you look at the results, and maybe more wine tomorrow.
Yeah.
You better believe it.
All right, guys, have a good week. I'll speak to you next week.
Hey, you too.
Bye now.
Bye-bye. Tim Luke and Greg Strom, the appraisal guys, the frickin' frack of Nick and Knack, TQAG.com on the web.